It's funny how you can know a person your entire life and still misjudge the exact moment they'll break. For my sister, Ellie, and our family, that moment was a picture-perfect Saturday in June, under a canopy of white roses with 150 guests as witnesses. For me, Kelly, it had happened 2 months earlier, in the sterile quiet of a hospital waiting room, when my sister looked me dead in the eye and called me a jealous liar. Ellie and I were what people call Irish twins, born just 11 months apart, but we might as well have been from different planets. She was the sun, I was the moon. Ellie was effortlessly beautiful, the kind of girl who could trip on a crack in the sidewalk and somehow make it look graceful. She collected friends like charms on a bracelet and had a laugh that could convince a storm cloud to clear. I was quieter, more observant, the one who remembered birthdays, fixed the leaky faucet, and always had a spare charger. For most of our lives, this dynamic worked. She was the star, and I was her trusted stage manager, making sure the lights were always hitting her at the perfect angle. So when she got engaged to Greg, I was genuinely thrilled. Greg was, on the surface, the perfect leading man for her. He was a successful marketing executive with a Colgate smile, a firm handshake, and the uncanny ability to charm parents. He'd look at my sister like she'd personally hung the stars in the sky. He was perfect. A little too perfect, maybe, but I chalked that up to my natural cynicism. As her maid of honor, I dove into wedding planning with the intensity of a military strategist. I spent my weekends touring vineyards in Napa, my evenings on Pinterest creating mood boards for rustic elegance, and my lunch breaks negotiating with florists over the subtle differences between cream and eggshell white roses. I was organizing, scheduling, and paying deposits from a joint account our parents had set up for the wedding. I didn't mind. Seeing Ellie so happy was my reward. This was her moment, and I was going to make sure it was flawless. The first crack in the perfect facade appeared on a Tuesday. I was downtown for a meeting that ended early, and decided to grab a late lunch at a little French bistro I loved. As I was settling into a corner booth, I saw him, Greg. He was sitting on the patio, his back mostly to me, leaning in close to a woman with fiery red hair. It wasn't the fact that he was having lunch with another woman that set off alarm bells. He was in marketing. Networking was his job. It was the way he did it, the way he reached across the table and tucked a stray strand of hair behind her ear, the way his thumb lingered on her cheek, the way she smiled back, a slow, intimate smile that wasn't meant for a business colleague. My blood ran cold. I fumbled for my phone, my hands shaking so badly I could barely unlock it. I zoomed in and snapped a photo. It was blurry, indistinct, but it captured the gesture, the intimacy. I paid for my untouched salad and left, my heart hammering against my ribs. Maybe it was innocent. Maybe she was a cousin I'd never met. Maybe he was consoling a grieving friend. I spent the next 48 hours creating 1,000 different rationalizations, each one flimsier than the last. The doubt was a poison, seeping into everything. The next time I saw him at our family dinner, I watched him like a hawk. I saw the way his eyes glazed over when Ellie talked about flower arrangements, the slight, almost imperceptible way he'd angle his phone away from her when a text came in. I decided I needed more than a suspicion. I needed proof. It felt disgusting, like I was betraying my sister by snooping, but the alternative, letting her walk down the aisle toward a man who was playing her for a fool, was unthinkable. I remembered the name of his company from a conversation and did some digging. A quick search on LinkedIn led me to his Teams page. And there she was, the redhead from the bistro. Her name was Amelia, a senior brand strategist. There were photos of them together at company events, always standing a little too close, a little too comfortable. It still wasn't a smoking gun, but the barrel was getting warm. The final, soul-crushing proof came a week later. I was driving home from a late night at my graphic design job when I saw his car, a very distinct dark gray Audi, parked outside a sleek modern apartment complex downtown. It was a part of town known for its high-end condos, not a place he had any business being at 11 p.m. Ellie thought he was at a work retreat in Monterey for 2 nights. A sick feeling washed over me. I parked across the street, my car blending into the shadows. I waited. and I watched. For nearly 2 hours, I sat there, feeling like the world's worst private detective. Just as I was about to give up, to call myself crazy and go home, the lights in a third-floor corner apartment flicked on. And there they were, silhouetted in the window, Greg and Amelia. He wrapped his arms around her from behind. She leaned her head back against his chest, and then he kissed her neck. They stood there for a long moment, swaying gently, as if to music I couldn't hear. This time, my hands were steady. I rested my phone on the dashboard to stabilize it and took a video. It was grainy, shot from a distance, but it was undeniable. The way they moved, the casual intimacy. It was a portrait of a long-standing affair. Telling Ellie was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. I chose my moment carefully. We were supposed to be having a final dress fitting, but our appointment got pushed back. We were alone in her apartment, surrounded by piles of RSVP cards and bridal magazines. "Ellie," I started, my voice barely a whisper. "We need to talk about Greg." She looked up from addressing an envelope, a small, happy smile on her face. "I know. Isn't he the best? He just sent me the sweetest text." My heart broke a little more. I took a deep breath. "I saw him. With someone else." Her smile vanished. "What are you talking about, Kelly? At a work thing?" "No," I said, my voice shaking. "Not a work thing. I saw them. They were together. It looked serious." I explained what I'd seen, first at the bistro, then outside the apartment. I kept my voice even, trying to present the facts without emotion. She just stared at me, her face unreadable. Then she let out a short, sharp laugh. "Are you serious right now? You're bringing this to me? 3 months before my wedding?" "I have a video, Elle. I can show you." "No!" she snapped, standing up so fast, her chair scraped against the hardwood floor. "I don't want to see some grainy, out-of-context video you took like a stalker. What is wrong with you?" "Something is wrong with him. He's lying to you." And then came the words that would echo in my head for months. "You're just jealous," she hissed, her eyes welling up with tears of anger, not sadness. "You've always been jealous. You can't stand that I'm happy, that I've found someone who loves me. You have to try and ruin it." The accusation hit me like a physical blow. Me? Jealous? Me, who had spent my entire life championing her, celebrating her victories as if they were my own. "That's not true, and you know it," I said, my own tears starting to fall. "I love you. That's why I'm telling you this." "If you loved me, you'd be happy for me," she sobbed. "Greg told me you might act out. He said you seemed stressed and resentful about the wedding. I can't believe I didn't see it." So that's how he'd done it. The snake. He had preemptively poisoned the well, painting me as the unstable, jealous sister. It was sickeningly brilliant. Our argument escalated. I begged her to just look at the evidence. She accused me of trying to sabotage her happiness. It ended with her screaming at me to get out of her apartment and out of her wedding. I thought our parents would be the voice of reason. I was wrong. I went to their house that night, my face tear-streaked, and showed my mom the video. She watched it with a pained expression before shaking her head. "Kelly, honey," she said, her voice dripping with condescending pity. "The lighting is terrible. That could be anyone. You know how much this wedding means to your sister. And to us. Greg is a good man. You're just letting the stress get to you." My dad was even worse. "You're going to apologize to your sister and to Greg," he said sternly. "You've made a terrible accusation, and you're going to fix it. We didn't raise you to be this destructive." In the space of a few hours, I had become a pariah in my own family. My calls to Ellie went to voicemail. My texts were left unread. Mom and Dad spoke to me only in clipped, disappointed tones. I was officially uninvited from the wedding party. They told me I could still come as a guest, if I could manage to behave. It was a final, cruel twist of the knife. The next 2 months were a special kind of hell. I watched from the sidelines as the wedding I had planned lurched forward. My replacement as maid of honor, Ellie's college friend, would post pictures on Instagram. The bridal shower I wasn't invited to, the bachelorette party in Vegas I was meant to have organized. Each photo was a smiling, glittering testament to my exile. My family would talk about the wedding preparations in front of me, carefully avoiding my gaze, as if I were a ghost at their table. The anger began to burn away the hurt. They had all chosen the beautiful lie over the ugly truth. They had chosen the charming cheater over their own daughter, their own sister. Ellie didn't want to be saved. My parents didn't want their perfect family picture disturbed. Fine. But I would not let Greg win. I would not let them sweep my truth, my pain, and my character under the rug. I wasn't going to plead or argue anymore. Words had failed me. I needed something undeniable. Something that couldn't be explained away. Something that would happen in front of all of them, in the one place they couldn't ignore it. My new plan began to take shape. It was audacious, and it required a level of cold calculation I didn't know I possessed. I became a ghost in Greg's life. I learned his routines. I knew he still met Amelia every Tuesday and Thursday at a discreet hotel bar across town. He had become arrogant, convinced he had gotten away with it. I needed more than just a blurry video. I needed a confession. I used my graphic design skills to create a fake email address and a plausible social media profile for a fictional woman. I found Amelia's personal accounts. She wasn't nearly as careful as Greg. I saw she was into yoga, indie bands, and had a weakness for a specific brand of expensive cupcakes. It was all there. I crafted a message to Greg from my fake profile, posing as a mutual acquaintance from a marketing conference. I mentioned a few things Amelia liked, things he would recognize. I planted a seed of doubt, hinting that Amelia was bragging to people about their affair, about how she had him wrapped around her little finger and was just waiting for him to leave his boring fiancé. It was a long shot, but manipulators like Greg are paranoid. Their biggest fear is losing control. A week later, he took the bait. I saw him and Amelia at the hotel bar, and their body language was all wrong. They were arguing. He was agitated. She was defensive. I was sitting 2 booths away, hidden behind a large potted plant, my phone's recorder on. I couldn't catch every word, but I got enough. "Telling people about us?" I heard him hiss. "Of course not. Why would you even think that?" she replied, her voice strained. "This could ruin everything, Amelia. The wedding is in 2 weeks. After that, once everything is settled, we can be together. You know the plan." "I know the plan, Greg," she said, her voice laced with bitterness. "The plan where I wait in the wings while you marry another woman. It's getting old." "Just be patient," he pleaded, his voice dropping. "It's just for show. Her family has money, connections. It's a strategic move. You're the one I love. You know that." Bingo. I had his voice, clear as day, admitting the entire charade. It was a strategic move. He wasn't just cheating on Ellie. He was using her, using our whole family. The next step was the delivery system. A slideshow at the reception felt too cliché. Shouting, "I object," felt too theatrical. My plan needed to be precise. It needed to be surgical. It needed to hit at the exact moment of maximum impact, the exchange of vows. I spent a small fortune at a specialty electronics store. I bought a tiny, high-quality digital audio player, no bigger than a sugar cube, and a miniature, high-fidelity speaker. I took the beautiful, satin-covered ring pillow I had bought months ago, the one Ellie had returned to me in a box of my things, and performed a delicate operation. I carefully opened a seam in the underside, inserted the audio player and speaker, and wired a tiny, almost invisible button to one of the silk ribbons used to hold the rings. I tested it 100 times. The sound quality was shockingly clear. I stitched the pillow back up with the skill of a surgeon. No one would ever know. The day of the wedding arrived, a brilliant, sunny June afternoon. I wore a simple, elegant navy blue dress. I was a guest, an outsider. I watched as my mother fussed over Ellie's veil, her eyes avoiding mine. I saw my father shake Greg's hand, slapping him on the back with a proud smile. The betrayal felt fresh, sharp as a shard of glass in my gut. I found the new maid of honor, a bubbly girl named Chloe, in a state of mild panic. "I can't find the ring pillow anywhere," she whispered frantically. "Ellie will kill me." I gave her a calm, sympathetic smile. "Don't worry," I said, producing the doctored pillow from my clutch. I brought the original one, just in case. I figured it was a shame to let it go to waste. Her face flooded with relief. "Oh my God, Kelly, you're a lifesaver." She took it without a second glance. I took my seat in the third row, my heart a steady cold drum in my chest. The music started. The procession began. And then Ellie appeared at the end of the aisle, on our father's arm. She was breathtaking. For a fleeting second, the fierce love I had for my sister overwhelmed the anger. A part of me screamed to stop, to let her have this one perfect, blissful day, even if it was built on a lie. But then I saw Greg waiting at the altar, his face a mask of adoration. I saw him wink at someone in the pews. I followed his gaze and my blood froze. It was Amelia. She was sitting in the groom's section, smiling demurely. He had the audacity to invite his mistress to his wedding. The rage returned, a white-hot fire, and it burned away any last-minute doubts. The ceremony was a blur of traditional vows and flowery readings. Then came the moment. The officiant smiled warmly. "May we have the rings, please?" Chloe, the maid of honor, stepped forward with the pillow. Ellie and Greg turned to face each other, their hands joined. Chloe untied Greg's ring and handed it to Ellie. Then she began to untie Ellie's ring for Greg. And in that moment, as her fingers fumbled with the ribbon, she accidentally pressed the tiny button I had so carefully sewn in. It wasn't loud at first, just a faint crackle from the pillow. A few people in the front pews frowned. Chloe looked down, confused, and then Greg's voice filled the silent, sacred space of the church. "Once everything is settled, we can be together. You know the plan." A collective gasp swept through the guests. Greg's face went white as a sheet. Ellie froze, her hand hovering over his. Then came Amelia's voice, full of bitterness. "The plan where I wait in the wings while you marry another woman." My mother stood up, her hand flying to her mouth. My dad looked from the pillow to Greg, his proud expression crumbling into disbelief. And then the final, damning line from Greg, his voice now crystal clear, echoing off the stone walls. "It's just for show. Her family has money, connections. It's a strategic move. You're the one I love. You know that." Silence. A thick, suffocating silence. Ellie slowly pulled her hands away from Greg's as if she'd been burned. She looked from his horrified face to the ring pillow, and then her eyes found mine in the crowd. In them, I didn't see anger anymore. I saw a shattering wave of comprehension, of horror, of devastating world-ending clarity. Greg started stammering. That's fake. It's doctored. Kelly did this. She's been trying to ruin this from the start." But it was too late. A woman in the groom's section stood up and pointed a shaking finger at Amelia. "That's her voice. That's the woman he was with." Chaos erupted. People were whispering, shouting. Amelia, the mistress, went crimson and tried to shrink into her seat. Ellie just stood there, a statue carved from ice. She looked at Greg, truly looked at him, for the first time without her rose-colored glasses. The disgust on her face was absolute. Then, she did something I never expected. She took her engagement ring off, the massive diamond he'd been so proud of, and held it out. "A strategic move?" she whispered, her voice dangerously quiet. She threw the ring. It hit him square in the chest with a pathetic little thud before skittering across the marble floor. She turned, her magnificent white dress sweeping around her, and walked back down the aisle. Not running, not crying, walking with a chilling, regal dignity. When she passed my row, she paused for a fraction of a second. Her eyes met mine again, and she gave a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't thanks. It was an acknowledgement. You were right. I didn't stay to watch the rest of the fallout. I didn't need to see my parents confront a stammering Greg or the guests fleeing the scene of the disaster. My job was done. I stood up and walked out of the church into the bright June sunshine, feeling a profound sense of quiet. I hadn't wanted to destroy my sister's wedding. I had wanted to save her from a life built on a lie. The cost was high, but the truth, I realized, was priceless. Our family didn't magically heal overnight. It took months of painful conversations. My parents had to apologize, not just to me for disbelieving me, but to Ellie for pushing her toward a man who saw her as a stepping stone. Ellie and I started talking again, slowly, tentatively. The wounds were deep, but for the first time since we were little girls, the dynamic had shifted. She wasn't the sun anymore, and I wasn't the moon. We were just two sisters, standing in the rubble, trying to figure out how to rebuild. And this time, we would build on the truth,